Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to the Shoals Marine Laboratories weekly marine science seminar. I'm Sarah Morris, the John M. Kingsbury Executive Director of the Shoals Marine Laboratory, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for our 8th Rock Talk of the 2025 season, the 60th season of the Shoals Marine Laboratory. For anyone who is new to our community, the Shoals Marine Laboratory is the oldest and largest marine laboratory dedicated to undergraduate education, both in terms of coursework and in terms of research opportunities. And it is jointly run by Cornell University and the University of New Hampshire. Our seminars are affectionately called Rock Talks because back in the day, before we had sound buildings, many of our classroom lectures and guest seminars happened literally out on the rocks in the intertidal. And even though we've migrated indoors, we like the term Rock Talk to harken back to our early years. In addition to our guests who are joining us online this evening, we have 3 classes in Kiggins tonight: Marine Mammal Biology, Investigative Marine Biology Lab. Y'all, I really am hoping that the coffee house is going to bring something out in y'all. And Evolution and Marine Diversity. In addition, we have 12 interns, our Shoals undergraduate research group, who are conducting 10 weeks of independent research here throughout the summer. Surges? We're excited for everyone, both here in person and those joining us online tonight. The format of tonight's seminar is a 45-minute seminar with approximately 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the seminar. For our friends online, we ask that you use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen so that we can repeat the questions out loud so that everyone can hear what they are before they get answered. For those of you in the room, I'll be coming around with the microphone. Invariably, it's one side of the room to the other side of the room. Just raise your hand, but we do want people to speak into the microphone so everyone who's online can also hear those questions. Tonight's speaker is Albert Carpinteyro, who is currently serving as a project manager at SubCom, a leader in defining the subsea cable industry, continuously improving both the quality and efficiency of undersea data transmission. Also in attendance this evening is Chris Carabini, a vice president at SubCom. Albert graduated from Rutgers University with a BS in Material Science and Engineering. After graduating, he began a career that he described as not doing the same thing every day. He has worked at SubCom for over 17 years, and his projects have taken him to over 40 countries. From the largest cities in the world to tiny atolls in the Pacific, connecting these places around the globe to the greater global networks has been a passion and adventure in his lifetime. After many years of travel, he began working specifically in oil and gas and scientific projects, integrating cable used in hydroacoustic stations, landing cables topside at some of the world's largest oil platforms, splicing in cables for subsea observatories near active hydrothermal vents, and of course, landing a cable on Appledore Island. For anybody who has not noticed this, the cable that you see down in Broad Cove, the manhole cover, this is a collaboration with SubCom and a UNH faculty member, Jen Makes Us Old, who's doing some really cool research that we can't wait to see come to fruition. This evening, Albert will be presenting The Physical Internet Surfs Under the Waves, SubCom Submarine Fiber Optic Network. Please join me in welcoming Albert Carpinteyro.
Good evening. Good. Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thanks so much to UNH as well as the Isle of Shoals for having SubCom, myself, and the person out here tonight. And also good evening. Hello to everyone watching online. So my talk, the physical internet surf below the waves, submarine fiber optic. So if you'll indulge me, imagine the internet as you know it. Could be routers, could be data centers, could be fiber optic networks, things like that you might have in your servers or things like that you're working on in your computer lab, things like that. Now, this is the physical internet. In this particular cable is guarded by a crab with a barnacle hat. So this is the physical internet. These cables, subsea fiber optic cables, span the globe and connect population centers, all research as well as previously discussed, topside platforms for oil and gas. Predominantly, they form the backbone of what we know as the internet. So, a lot of folks are only impressing that satellites are responsible for bringing data from one continent to the next. 99% of the traffic, in fact, is all handled by submarine fiber optic cables that have been around for decades, installing them for decades. I believe comparison would be that all of the traffic, all the capacity that satellites currently handle could be handled by one fiber on this cable. And I can get into a little more about it, why that is. So who uses these cables? Who install these cables? Who hire SubCom? Large telecommunications companies, conglomerates that are looking to expand their service, support data centers that have massive warehouses of servers and the AI computation farms that we could be piped into the greater internet launch. So there are hundreds of cables in the seabed operating right now. I think there's enough cable on the ocean to circumnavigate the globe 35 times. So that is the physical internet, subsea fiber optic. Now, what happens on shore and how it gets distributed to you, those are completely different fibers, cables, and problems, but we focus on the long haul, getting from, say, Isle of Shoals, Appledore Island, all the way to the UK, Asia, connecting the entire. So, SubCom, we have been around for a long time in one form or another. Originally, there is right here in Hampshire, Maine, I believe, right? Simplex was yeah. So Simplex was a cable company manufacturing coax and other kinds of cables. And at some point, the need for a transatlantic telegraph system was needed to communicate real time across the ocean. Now, the first transoceanic cable was laid in 1866. It lasted a couple of weeks. We'll get into why a little bit later. But SubCom, again, as a company, we also have a history with AT&T Bell Labs. A lot of the developments and technologies that allow subsea fiber optic systems to exist came out of a lot of the research from AT&T Bell Labs, along with Simplex, along with the cable manufacturing. This is where SubCom found its home. And the first transoceanic fiber system was installed in 1988. So this is old tech, but continually improving every day. So moving on to today. We're currently located about 5 kilometers here, right up the river in the Scatterbuck. Pronounce that right? I get it. I trip it up a little bit. So we have an enormous campus where we manufacture our cable, repeaters, BUs. I'll get into what those are. But I believe you have some cable samples spread along your table to get an idea of what those, what our actual cable looks like. And I'll explain a little bit more about it. So we're right up the road. We have over 1,000 employees, many of them engineers. But we don't just make cable. We also install cable, and I can talk about that here. So our experience, again, over 1,000 employees, innumerable patents, so many networks, and we've deployed enough cable to circumnavigate the globe 25 times. I believe we've just hit 1 million kilometers deployed. We do things in kilometers. Again, I myself have had a journey where I landed cables. Again, I've been to over 40 countries, landing cables. We also have 9 ships and a plethora of other material like ROVs and plows to help us protect and bury and inspect our land. So, yeah. Now, what does it take to build and install a subsea network. It's a massive effort. We have, from the very beginning to the very end, so many different diverse backgrounds, majors, people coming from different walks of life, serving key processes and roles in any of these fields you see above. So you have engineers doing modeling these subsea networks. You have optical design. You have desktop study. Desktop study, that's more of a marine study. So you're doing sonar, you're doing survey work, you're doing liaison with local fisheries, because we don't want to lay these cables anywhere there's anchorages or marine mammal sanctuaries, things like that. So all this needs to be planned ahead. We need to ensure that wherever we're laying our cable from point to point, we're avoiding, things that can hurt the cable or the environment. Then from the planning stage goes to permitting, massive permitting effort. You can't do anything without having your proper permits in place to lay cables, especially, considering here we are on a very delicate marine environment. It's a beautiful island here, Avalon and Appledore. Need to have all our permits in place, of course, before we do anything. And survey as well goes into that. Once we have a general idea of where our route is, we have folks do survey. Then it goes to our manufacturing phase, where we, again, getting into who we are and all the different people that we involve in this project. All the manufacturing that happens here in New Hampshire. We also have our logistics folks, our vessel folks who do the installation themselves, like me, who do the installation on shore. And eventually, after it's all installed, we need to also have subject matter experts who are able to test it. So photonics engineers, people who have a background in doing all the testing and things like that come in. But that being said, again, what I want to restate here is that we may have folks from different backgrounds, from environmental engineers, electrical engineers, and techs. You may start in your career in one specific area, but I know for me as a material science engineer, I've been able to jump around and do different things at SubCom. So all of the people that you see, all the study paths you see on the left, there is no direct line to something analogous at SubCom in the long term. You can jump around. You have permitting people who have marine backgrounds. You have contract management people who started in shore ends. You have any number of different pathways in a company as big and diverse as SubCom, with all the different things that let me do every day. In fact, currently, we even have 12 summer interns from UNH, although I understand that we have a lot of different universities and locations represented here on the rock. So SubCom's hired multiple UNH interns, but also interns from other colleges in the area and out of the area, from engineering backgrounds, mechanical background, oceanographic studies, even business administration. Again, as a company like SubCom, you have the ability to start and jump around to any number of cool things. So Chris and Jen and some of our folks Debbie Brask, some of the folks at SubCom, we really love our relationship with UNH and with students that have been interns and even have stayed on to work at SubCom for many years. So overall, SubCom as a company, we are one of the leaders in these subsea fiber optic systems, manufacturing and installing them. In fact, this island is an oceanographic system that has hydrophones on it, listening for nuclear tests. So it's not just telecommunications cables. It's anything that needs a connection on the on the sea through the oceans. We're able to keep them. Okay, that's who's up. Now let's get a little more technical, and I'll do my best to explain a bit about networks. So networks take many different forms. What SubCom focuses on, what subsea fiber optic cables focus on, are long-haul transmission situations. You need to get a bundle of ones and zeros from one side of the world to the other. The networks you see above, they're kind of just examples. I would say that the second one down, the cable trunk and branch, is probably what represents SubCom's work the most. Where we have, I wanted to create a communications link from Appledore Island to, let's say, somewhere in Maine. Let's go all the way up to the national park up in Acadia. So we wanted to go all the way to Acadia. But since we're laying a cable from Appledore to Acadia, why not have a branch? Why not have a link that goes from that goes right to shore here? That's what a trunk and branches system is. It's a point-to-point communications network that has little branches that reach out and allow places along the long track, the point A to point B, to also enjoy the connectivity. So with that in mind, I'm going to take you over to a slide with a lot to say. I'm going to do this as carefully as I can because it's been a while since I practiced a discussion on the optimism. So what you're looking at here is on the y-axis is power level, and on the x-axis is wavelength. So we're in the IR spectrum. So you can remember from your physics class, you have light involves sunlight or most light in general has within it different wavelengths, different colors, if you will. Now this is the IR, so it's not visible light, but you get the idea. On the x-axis, you have the color of the light, and on the y-axis, you have the power. So this is what in subsea fiber optic networks we call the L band. This is a sweet spot for fiber optic transmission. What you'll see to the left of this is something, I guess on the bottom, I guess I'd call it 1530 nanometers, and on the high end, 1570 nanometers. Now, going from left to right, you'll see some noise on the left, then you'll see a big block, then you'll see these spikes. Each of these spikes are channels. The aggregate of everything you see from 1540 to 1570 or so, this whole bandwidth here, is the sweet spot for fiber optic transmission for two reasons. One, the physics of fiber optics themselves, of silica glass. So you have two things that stop you from sending a signal a long distance. You have, call it basically resistance, which would be something more accurately described as attenuation. So you guys deal with signals and things like that all the time as far as oceanographic studies. You have attenuation in a signal. Send out a signal, over time, it decays. Power can't, nothing's perfect. I know in our high school classes, we were like, okay, ignore resistance, ignore friction. Real world, we can't do that, right? So the glass itself that we're sending light down will absorb, reflect some of the light. So you're going to lose your signal as the length goes on. So that's happens across the entire spectrum. Now, in this particular bandwidth, the silica glass doesn't absorb as much. So that's why we landed here with our light spectrum, our IR light spectrum. 1550 nanometers is a sweet spot for silica glass, so not steal so much of our power. On the other side of it, there's something really cool about erbium doped fiber glass. That's a mouthful, but essentially erbium ions inserted into a piece of fiber optic silica glass. If you excite it amplifies light, just so happens to amplify light in the 1550 band, a nice smooth line. So two things to push us from the attenuation and the amplification. Because if I want to send a signal from Appledore Island to what's our Acadia National Park, I'm only going to get maybe 90 kilometers, maybe 120 kilometers before my signal is toast. So we need repeaters. What repeaters do, they have that doped fiber with the erbium in it, and they're excited pumps that the signal comes in, it gets amplified in this sweet spot of 1550 band, and the signal propagates. Now, there's a lot to explain from this picture. I think I got most of it right. But what's important to take away right now is that each of those spikes is a channel of data. It could be any one of your channel of data all aggregating together on this one spectrum. So how do we bundle these channels together? Wave division multiplexing. Another mouthful. But on the top, each of those arrows represents, say, a wavelength of light, a signal, in fact. So your signal, you're in your house, you're on the internet, that's your data signal. Now, right now, you guys are all using the same signal. You're all using the same channel. So that doesn't work for long haul transmission. We need to split you up and put you into your channels along the fiber optic path to get you where you need to go. So what happens is these optical line cards, multiplex this, they change it, they group them together, they send them from one station to the other station, they split them apart, there's your signal. That's how you get these ones and zeros from A to B. I'll keep on playing it a bit, but so on the left-hand side, that's Appledore. On the right-hand side, that's Acadia. Now that branching unit in the middle, that's sending your signal to the port. And these repeaters that are in the water are amplifying the signal. You have a bunch of different signals, all aligned, set up on the wavelength to be their own channels. Like I said earlier, these are all your separate channels. And that allows us to communicate so much more data than just by going one signal at a time. Because all these signals are traveling at once. This is all live, it's real time. So what that means for us, for the internet in general, is one fiber can transmit 20 terabits of data per second. Or, as you can see on the board here, 75 days of high-def video, 4.75 years of music, 80 days of scrolling through TikTok nonstop, or 3.5 years of online gaming per second, one fiber. Now, our cables can have 4 fibers, 12 fibers, 24 fibers. What are we up to now? 24 fibers. So that is the backbone of the internet as far as getting your ones and zeros from A. Now, there's all kinds of little rabbit holes you can go into about, your spacing in between your channels. How many channels can you fit here? Because what you see on the left, that little block, that's just noise. Because you don't need that many channels. You fill it up with noise, so that way there's just not an empty hole. And the physics of the repeaters, they don't really like a hole where there should be info. So you can cram as many channels as tight as you can, and your only limits are a bunch of weird physical interactions that happen, and also all the technology you have on either end to be able to decode and separate these signals into their separate channels. If this interests you at all, go grab your, resident physicist or optical engineer and grab them by the shoulders and shake them and ask them to tell you more. Because it's really, really cool stuff. But it's something that I didn't understand before I started the job, but I have a little bit of understanding. So, cables. Back to cables. How do we make them? How big are they? You have one here on your beach now. The cable that we installed in April is only the DA version you see up here. That's a double armor version that we use to protect it near shore. The fiber, each fiber, fairly sure you've mostly seen the fiber optic, or at least the samples that you have on your desk, the size of a human hair. So we have DA cable landing on the beach. How do we make it? We get fiber, and this is all happening at our plant here in Portland. We get fiber on spools. We end up taking that fiber, putting it inside a loose tube, gel-filled loose tube, that protects it from any water leaks or things like that. If the cable gets hurt, breaks, it's going to slow down the watering. This is the loose tube. You can probably see it on your samples, a very small portion of it. After it gets through loose tube, it goes in an armor wire packet, and then it gets a copper conductor pressed and welded around it. The copper conductor is there to power the amplifiers that I showed you. Then it gets a layer of polyethylene, which is the white plastic that you see on your cable samples as well. After that, one thing I will say, the poly, that is the cable center package, that poly package. That's the cable that's in deep water. You don't need anything other than that. Everything else that we add after that is only for protection that we need here shore. For the event of, say, anchors or excavation or something. The armor wires get spun off, massive spools. Again, this is happening 24/7 mostly in our cable factory in Canada. We make made the most cable we've ever made so far this year, right? Something like that. And then ultimately it gets wrapped in a fabric wrap with some tar, bitumen kind of substance to give it some handling characteristics. So when we lay it, we have a good grip on. So, in summary, subsea cables, they are forming the basis of the internet as we know it today. They are flexible. We lay them in water depths excess of what, 5,000, 6,000 meters of water. And optical repeaters are the amplification that's necessary to continue that signal, propagate that signal across incredible distances. We're currently laying a cable from Los Angeles to Fiji, and it's going to have branching units, stopovers in maybe Hawaii or somewhere along the way. How many ship, Chris, are we using for that? 2 shiploads, 3 shiploads. We'll get into a little bit about the ship and what they do here in a minute. So yeah, building networks involves also the repeater manufacturing that we do at the factory, some of the network assembly and some of the testing. It's a massive facility, and it's pretty much all this stuff. So I haven't lost everyone yet. Talk a little bit more about marine installation. So we built this network. We've surveyed. We've manufactured all these repeaters. We have all the design down. We know how many bits are going here and there, what the ratio is, how much each branching unit needs as far as capacity. We've done all that. Now we need to put the cable on the vessel, land it like we did here in April, and then lay the cable and repeaters on the seabed. So most of the cable and the repeaters, again, in deep water, all laid on the ocean. This is actually a shot from April, where I'm out here on one of the small boats to the left, down here that we just pause it right there. Yeah, there you have it. There's Broadcoat. On the left-hand side here, you'll see a small square, concrete square, I guess to the right of the little orange excavator. That is the beach manhole. So that's point A, as it were. And the cable ship offshore is currently feeding us a messenger line. So divers have come out to the boat. They've grabbed a line, a hauling line. They brought it to shore. We're waiting for our excavator with our winch to start pulling the cable. So we've got the messenger line in. Then the end of cable is attached to the messenger line. The cable is then hauled in. I got a couple other photos of that coming up. But the divers are there. It's a long day, but landing day is probably one of the most important days for me as a shore end guy. It's the culmination of a year plus of planning. We're not just doing this in beautiful sunny New Hampshire weather in April. Sometimes we're doing it in off the coast of some tiny atoll with a hurricane coming in. You have to plan these things much in advance for every condition. So in any case, there's the cable vessel. We have 6 of those and 3 others, right? Of a different class of the cable vessel. And here is the cable encased in some protecting pipe coming into shore. So it's floated to shore. As you can imagine, you wouldn't want to drag the cable on the seabed with the winch wire. You would chew up the cable and also, create a lot of tension that you don't need. But this is actually landing day here on Appletor. I believe the date was April 11th or something like that. It was 35 degrees at night here. I was in a sleeping bag in one of the bunkhouses. It was a lot of in dorm 1. I was in dorm 1. With either chattering. The muskrats didn't seem to mind. They were out every day. Jen was on the boat. With nice hot meals. I think so. We had the grill, and I'd like to thank Zach, by the way, for making us feel at home during that whole process. But definitely one of the more fun landings I've done recently, for sure. So there's the cable coming in the shore. So we're not just going to lay the cable on the surface so that anybody can just come around, kick it, bury it, punch at it. We don't know what that is. I don't know what people are going to do with it. We need to bury these cables on the shore. So we excavated as much as we could. There's massive boulders in Barcode. The excavators did a great job of pulling those to the side, getting them out of the way so we could get the cable in. It's a group effort by a bunch of different organizations working for UNH. For SubCom part, we were responsible for getting that cable into the beach manhole from the ship, and also the cable lay itself. So on the right-hand side on the first picture, the left-hand side of the second picture, those are grounding cables that we need to have a first ground, so when we power the cable, we have something to do. But those are buried out there as well. Let's see. Once the cable is on the beach, we need to send divers down there to cut all those floats. We want that cable to sink. Cable's not buoyant, it doesn't float. But now that we've got everything aligned, so we have a string of floating cable from shore to ship. We can cut those floats and the cable's just going to sit down. Sometimes divers are out there working. Sometimes they don't see much. Sometimes they get visited by penguins and other sea life. And this was not in Broad Cove. Admittedly, no, this is not in Broad Cove. I think I asked what the divers what they saw, and they said rocks. Mostly fish and crab, yeah. Okay. So we've done the shore end. We're still on our journey of building this network. We've done the shore end, and now it's the ship's turn to do all the work. So these are cable ships, cutaway a version of it. Here we have these are DP2 vessels. DP2 meaning that they're able to hold position incredibly well. I'm not sure in some cases within meters or feet in most cases, depending on how. And so these vessels have azimuth thrusters. They can hold their heading and position and really stay on station wherever they are, which is critical for us because, as you can see, they were really, really close. Closer than some folks might think a ship should get to shore. A lot of times they're not that close. This is a great day, nice and calm, and so we were able to pull cable in very quickly. Obviously, if we have a lot farther away, it's going to take longer to pull in. So these are our vessels. For cable engineers, when I first started, you could be out there a couple weeks to a couple months doing these major cable lays. I've been told it's a lot of fun. I get seasick, so I was a shore end guy right away. They gave me an option, shore or ship. I said shore. In these cable ships, we held enough cable, I believe, Chris, to do a transatlantic lay. So we have enough cable capacity. There's 3 cable tanks you can see there in the cutaway, and this is the size of the cable tanks. This all still needs to be done by hand. And when I say this, I mean the proper spooling or loading of the cables. Someone needs to make sure that all of those different cable plates. You guys have extension cords. You guys have dozens of cable chargers. You put them in your bag. What happens? They get all tangled up. It's impossible to keep it straight. We have to lay the cable in this tank to be flaked in a certain way, so that way when it comes out of the cable tank, there's nobody in there. Nobody needs to touch it. It just comes out nice and clean. It's like if it was coming out of a fresh box of rope. So that's a fun job that you can do at the factory, or if you like listen to podcasts and you don't like. So the cable ship's doing its job. It's loaded its cable. We've landed the cable. I mentioned very early on in the presentation that the first transatlantic cable didn't last very long at all because they didn't know about the mid-Atlantic ridge. So for those of you who've studied, I'm sure you can tell me more, but the mid-Atlantic ridge, mountain range in the middle of, so when we're trying to lay a cable from the UK to, say, Halifax, Nova Scotia, and you don't have X-ray vision, you can't see the seabed, you assume it has just a kind of a flat, sandy bottom. If you're in the 1886, that's what you're going to see. Now we know mid-Atlantic ridge exists. If you're laying cable and you don't know about this, you're suspending massive sections of cable, potentially miles and miles of cable, just hanging out there between peaks on mountains. How long do you think this is going to last? About 2 weeks. Yeah, that's how it was. And oddly enough, you might think that cables back then were built, with weaker material. To a certain extent, that might be true. But ultimately, cables are more or less the same as far as some of the high strength steel and some of the composition. A cable, if you took a cross section of cable from, early 1900s, or with the exception of the fiber, it's going to look very similar. It's going to look with the armor wires, some of the nylon wraps on the outside, and the center, insulator might be a different material, but it's going to look nearly identical. But they didn't know about the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. They were doomed from the start because they didn't have enough survey data. So if I could go back and begin to go back to the beginning of my talk, where I talked about all the different engineering involved, laying cable, I think I'd probably have to kick Chris here on this specific equation, which I'm sure he's got. What, you got that doing something with it? Yeah. So you're laying cable. If you're laying cable on a flat seabed with minimal undulations, good for you. You're having a good time. You're laying cable fast, paying out at near constant speeds, making slight adjustments. On the top of the cable, on the top of the cable deck, cable engine, you have a cable counter. You also have your GPS information to understand your position. So you know how far you've moved, and you know how much cable you paid out. Now, in a flat world, great, 1-to-1. That's not how the world works. So you have cable contours. You have all of these different contours, but you have seabed contours. You have the Atlantic Ridge. What do? Well, you have to adjust either your speed or your cable payout to match the seabed contour. You want this cable laying nice and neatly on the seabed. You don't want it too slack, because if it's too slack, it'll kind of knot itself. And then if you keep pulling, it's going to break. So you have to adjust your speed. You have to adjust the cable payout. And it's all about matching that angle of the cable lee off the back of your deck. It's all done, again, with modeling software, and all the ROVs, all the survey data goes into it in order to ensure that you have a properly laid cable. So that's a whole group in itself at SubCom, where they do where we take the survey data that we get from all of our pre-installation work. We model it using some cable laying software, and we're able to tell the ship engineers how much cable to pay out and where. So that's the design validation. That's the saying, okay, here, and then at the end of the day, the cable ship is able to say, well, at this position, I should have this on the cable counter to make sure I'm laying the cable fine. So, in summary, the main lay vessel, for different types of cable, different cable weights, and different slack scenarios, you need to lay at different speeds. You need to avoid having large suspensions, like you want to miles and miles of cable on the bottom of the seabed, suspended between two mountain peaks. Closer to shore, this is what we need to have armor cable to protect it from fishing boats, anchoring, anything like that might hurt it. And what you'll see, it's kind of hard to see here, but what you're seeing is a photo of a long ROV, art survey data plot, where we have all the different areas of interest that we're trying to avoid to have our cable lay on the flattest different seabeds being modeled in real time. So you've laid your cable. Okay, now some cases we got to go check it, or we got to go bury it. In some cases, if we can bury it with a plow, that's its own process. I don't think I can get into right now. But the ROV inspections, we have to send ROVs down all the time. And does anyone here on the island have to deal with any ROVs or anything like that? Any or drones or anything like that on the seabed? No? Okay. You need to get them with. I know. All right, so ROV inspection. So we lay these cables all over the world. We are laying in some of the coolest geological areas, or a lot of times avoiding them. We don't want exactly subsea volcanoes and sulfuric vents and things melting the steel and things around the cable. So we get to see some cool things. Occasionally it's, plastic bags and garbage, which is important. But other times we get to see some really cool animals at them. I added these slides in here, or these photos in here, because I don't know what any of these things are. I was hoping someone had an idea about number one, I want to say, from top of the top of the left. Any ideas? Any takers? All right, I'm going to just slide this to you in a printout so that way we can have some sort of, we can get some extra credit on this one. Anyone have any ideas about any of these other than say, okay, I'm going to go with sea cucumber for the bottom middle, but I don't know if that's right. Okay, so bottom left is a filter feeder that I would see very regularly, but that was definitely by far the largest that I had seen on that trip. Top right, I have no idea. On that Grenadier. Cool. Gonna have to look that up. So you can see our cable laying right there, laying there, just kind of hanging out with the seabed, not really hurting anybody. Okay, cool. Sometimes I'm on the boat when the ROV, these are ROV photos I got from my coworker who, again, he goes on the boat. Sometimes I am on the boat near shore and I get to be, bear witness to some of the site survey things we need to do. So here we bury the cable. So I don't want to see any cable. I just want to see trench. But if you create a small curvature in the seabed, you attract all kinds of different sea life. So along this trench, crabs, various little sea fish. I believe this is a reef shark. If anyone can confirm that. No, am I wrong? It has dorsal fins. It's not a ray. I don't think it's a ray. What is it? Do you know? Angel shark. Angel shark. Oh, okay. All right, okay. I'm gonna send you other photos too because I don't know what those things are. But okay. So again, I'm on the boat and I get to see some cool things every now and again. Aside from the occasional shark, we also I didn't have any time to throw in some photos of some really cool cephalopods. I'm sure you guys see a lot of those. You see a lot of those now? Yeah, fair enough. So we've laid our cable, we've buried our cable. I guess that's job complete. So we do have, I only have about 4 more minutes before we go to questions. 2 more minutes after. So beyond the standard telecommunications work, stuff that I do as part of the oil and gas scientific side of SubCom, I got to go to oil platforms in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, which I think some of those photos are from that water depth, that 7,000 feet of water. So here we have our SubCom vessel, and here is me up here on the right-hand side, standing near that blue triangle. That's our winch. So what you're not seeing is under the seabed right now, or under the water rather. We have the cable in a catenary going up to the I-tube, which is just a steel tube that allowed me to pull the cable all the way up. So we had connected offshore oil platforms, which was really cool for them. These guys were working on like microwave links and satellite. They didn't have Netflix. They have Netflix now, and they really love it out there. There's an ROV inspecting the bottom of the I-tube, watching the cable go in. That's what I did on offshore oil platform, and now bringing it back to Appledore. So Appledore Island here, we managed to land the cable. In another couple months, we're going to come back and we're going to put the deployment pallet down. The deployment pallet is a fiber optic converter. So what it does is it takes our cable and changes it into something that's kind of plug and play. So you can actually plug in fiber optic connections at great pressure, at great depth, with the use of our mud mat here. So our cable coming in on the left, and those plugs that you see right there are the termination point of SubCom's work here at Appledore Island. And what you're going to do is have a sensored array that's going to plug in with a hose and give your array power and fiber optic connection all the way back to shore. So I believe you'll probably have some thoughts on something similar or something in the future about that. And that's like all I have to share with you today. So thank you so much for your attention. Questions?
Thank you so much, Albert. Any questions in the room?
Yeah, so near the beginning, you said that SubCom runs 25 out of, I think the number's 37, undersea cables. How is data allocated between SubCom versus other companies? Like who's responsible for distributing that?
Okay, so yeah, so to clarify, I believe what I had on the slide was that there's enough cable in the seabed to go around the Earth 35 times. SubCom has laid 25 of those circumnavigating. Now, as far as data allocation, all these different cable systems are all these different conglomerates are contracting SubCom to install their networks for them. But the fun thing about fiber optic networks is sometimes they can get hurt by anchors and something like that, and they all eventually might need to borrow and share some capacity on each other's cable system. So it's small world of operators, but we work with all of them.
Hi, super interesting talk. Thank you. I have a question about the repeaters along the cable. They're spliced into the cable?
Yep.
And so how many of those, given say a kilometer of cable, would there be to boost the signal?
So depending on the system capacity, you might have a repeater every 90 to 100 kilometers, something like that. Oh, wow. So there's a lot, when you're trying to go from, LA to Fiji. That's why we're in the sweet spot in that spectrum where the application works and the loss is less.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was wondering how you accommodate spreading at the mid-ocean ridges. Do you put more of it down, or like you said, you didn't want slack?
Great question. That is the dance. You don't want too much slack. And depending on the cable type, you have to lay it with a little bit of tension back so it doesn't have muscle memory and just twist on itself. So it's the delicate dance that you're doing with a touchdown. So you're in really deep water. Your payout and your speed are all you can really adjust as what the cable is doing. The cable might be touching down on the seabed a couple miles behind you because it's that far away. So it's all has to do with the quality of the survey data, the planning of our lay plan, and the experience of the cable engineers on deck. Also, what tensions and things we're experiencing in real time. Chris, anything to add to that? So, real quick, that to visualize what I meant earlier, that that distance between where the ship is and where that touchdown point is could be miles.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for the talk. I was just curious about kind of like the testing process, like the cable testing process. So do you kind of like synthesize from like the spectrum data that you were showing earlier, or is it something different?
No, that's right. So when we have certain parameters that we need to follow for our cable and repeaters so that the client, or the customer, whenever they put their transmission gear on, our cable is meeting a certain specification. So again, this picture again, I can't get enough of it. So the further the signal goes without being corrected, those peaks start to widen. Because again, there's no such thing as no friction and no air resistance in the real world. So those peaks might be perfect here where we just measured it, but those peaks might start to widen as the signal goes. So there's filters that will allow for some correction, and or we have we can space the bands out a little further so that they don't bleed into each other. So that way you can go further distance. So the more data you want to cram into the spectrum. Again, I'm only showing you 8 channels. We could fit 40 or more, depending on the space. But you can get that answer your question? Sorry. Okay.
Hi, so what does maintenance on these cables look like, or how long do they last in general?
Okay, these cables are designed to last 25 years still, correct? Yeah. So the entire network could last 25 years. And if there's a cable break, we have a process, we can go pick up the cable, splice it back together, add a little cable, and then lay it right back down again, have it working in a couple days, if we're there.
Hi, thank you for your talk. You were talking about like survey data and also burying cables. It's how many meters down? And then I have a follow-up question.
Oh, burying cable?
Yeah, like in the
Oh.
people are like how deep?
So so as far as depth of burying, it depends on what we're burying. So if you can imagine, if it's soft and silty, that means all the anchors from the boats here are going to dig right down into it. So we need to bury it deeper. But if it's like hard, we don't need to bury it because the anchors aren't going to cut that deep. Now, as far as what depth of water we need to bury to, we typically depends on what the customer wants, 1,500 meters. After that, it's the cable just on the seabed on the surface. So 1,500 meters away from shore. All right,
Yeah.
follow-up question.
And I was just wondering, like, how do you minimize impacts on like seafloor communities when you're digging the cables?
Okay.
Thank you.
Chris? Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
are you manufacturing the glass or is it coming from Corning? And if so, is it a proprietary formula? Is it similar to what they're using on the Gorilla Glass on all our iPhones?
This question is coming from Robert, who is our artist in residence, who is a glass blower,
Gotcha.
glass artist.
Not going into competition.
So to get that ultra low loss, yeah, it's coming from Corning. They're manufacturing these cables for these fibers. Well, certain fibers actually might be used to get rid of some of those bad characteristics that you see on longer haul systems. So you could have different fiber types in that. So we purchase our fiber from Corning, from OFS, a lot of suppliers based on what we need.
And is it pure silica? You mentioned silica, but
Yeah,
glass
yeah,
is all silica, so
it's
is it
incredibly pure silica, so that way you don't have all the absorption that happens from having impurities in the glass.
awesome? And then the color variation in the fibers, is that for identification for splicing or?
Exactly right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Hi. Fascinating. Back to the site selection.
Sure.
Can you describe like sort of jurisdictional issues you have to face in international waters and that process? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
And then do you collect your own bathymetry data? Or you're sort of buying that information from other entities for the site selection process?
While I'm getting over to the other question, I'm going to ask my own question. Do you hire full-time divers and full-time ROV operators as part of the SubCom workforce?
Yeah, in fact, we do. Yeah, we hire full-time employees from all different backgrounds and walks of life because in fact some of the people that I knew in shore end starting out were ex-divers. Some of them we met on site and they became contractors. Some, it's a very cool industry where sometimes, like in this case, I was working for my boss at SubCom. He semi-retired. And then he would work for me out here on Appledore Island. He wasn't working for me. Rich, if you're watching, we work together to get it done. Thanks.
Thank you for your talk. I know you mentioned about avoiding vents. Have you run into vents eating through your cable and essentially melting it? Have you, how do you deal with that, and how often do you have to deal with them?
Sometimes we lay cables to those areas because, like I believe it was, I don't know, the project off the coast of Oregon, where they wanted a series of arrays, just like UNH has, where they have video cameras pointed at hydrothermal vents, and so we laid right up to them with our DVs so they could have a connectivity and power to shore. So in fact, they're still live streaming, I think, to this day, some of the cool things that they're seeing right at the vent. Thanks for the question.
Well, thank you for your talk. Since you have such long cables running through the ocean floor, when one gets damaged, how do you locate where it's damaged?
Oh, great. So one of the cool things that we can do with fiber optics is optical time domain reflectometry, which OTDR, you can shoot a laser down and it'll kind of give you a profile of what the cable looks like. And it also gives you the distance. Now with repeaters, you need to do something called coherent OTDR, but we also are sending power down the cable. So we can calculate based on the voltage drop, and in good cases, we can actually pinpoint where that cable break may be. So we have a lot of data about coming from the cable itself about how it may or may not be damaged. You guys have great questions, by the way.
You're worried about people not being able to follow the
I'm
talk.
not worried about answering them.
Thank you for the talk. When it comes to breakages, how easily are you able to find out the cause, and how often is it that you have like foreign actors interfering with the cables?
Breakages, foreign actors, external aggression. Yes, all important, cool things that we talk about. The fiber so a lot of vessels have AIS. Often we're able to identify, so our cables are coming into major population centers, which may coincide with large ports. Large ports means large vessels. I know we lay cables through the Bay of Hong Kong, and we have to bury it like 10 meter burial, which is an impossibly large piece of equipment. But even in that area, there's going to be anchorages nearby. So those large freighters anchoring during heavy storms, they might come over and drag. But with the AIS data, which is the vessel identification, I think it would stand for, Chris, don't remind me. Automated identification. So you can all go on the internet right now, the vesselfinder.com or something like that, where you can see, any vessel with its AIS on, you kind of pinpoint where it's been in the last couple minutes. So if we know the time of break, which we will absolutely know because we're recording data down to the millisecond on millisecond or so on when the fiber is down, we can backtrack that, see if there's anybody in that area. Oh, look, there's a vessel that just happened to cross our cable within a certain time frame where we had our breakage. So as far as external aggression, DAS, we have some ability to use some of the quirks of physics in the fiber itself, any strain induced by vibrations. We had this conversation earlier today. You correct me if I'm wrong about how we want to phrase that. But you could also use something distributed acoustic sensing to sense if there's some vessel or something like that parking in or near your cable. I mean, even near it, like or nay. Mostly vessels.
With that, we have actually reached the end of our time, and I know there's a couple of people who have other questions. So I will say that both Chris and Albert will be here through breakfast tomorrow. They are leaving on the food run boat. So you are welcome to grab them in the breakfast line and continue, and they'll also be here for a few minutes if there's additional questions that anybody has to ask. I want to thank them for coming. This was fascinating, really, really cool stuff. And we can't wait to, it's all the things that we've been seeing in Broad Cove and the questions that we've had about what was here and how this was working. And thank you so much for this. For anybody online or for those of you that will be finishing your class, next week's Brock Talk will be 8 o'clock. Tony Lyons, who is part of UNH's Center for Acoustic Research and Education. And he will be on campus and providing our next Rock Talk. So, and anybody who's here right now, you can join us live streaming on the internet. So again, one more round of applause for Albert. And thank you all for your attention.
Thanks so much.